Hey guys, and welcome back to another Guild Wars 2 guide. I should probably be getting on the part 3 of my beginner's guide, but I felt like there was so much information I needed to break it up even just a bit more. So we're going to focus on combat today. We're going to do a little bit of a combat guide, and I think that should make the beginner's part 3 video a little bit shorter. So anyway, let's get started. Guild Wars 2 is a very combat-intensive game. The bulk of the content that you're going to do in this game will require you to fight things in order to move forward. So learning the ins and outs of the combat system are essential. While most other MMOs are still tied to the Holy Trinity or the tank healer DPS system, Guild Wars 2 kind of takes its own stance on that, sort of like with questing. Rather than having specific classes tied to a role, everyone does a little bit of everything. At least for the core game. In Heart of Thorns, they have added some specializations that break this up a little bit, but we're not going to worry about that until we get there. So if you look down at the bottom center of your screen, you'll notice all of your skills, but also a red circle with a number in it indicating how much health you have. Just above that, you'll see 2 yellow arcs that actually are how many dodges you can do. So when you dodge in this game, it will take one of those halves away, and it'll slowly regenerate. Now you can speed this up with buffs, but let's not worry about that right now. To the left of your health, you'll see 5 slots for your skills. These skills are weapon skills and, as you might have guessed, are determined by the weapons that you have equipped. To the left of that, you'll see the weapon swap button that we talked about in previous videos. Above your weapon skills, you'll see a few more slots, and the number of slots will depend on what class you're playing. These are your profession skills. Now the number of these and what these do is going to depend on your class, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. So to the right of your health, you'll notice 5 more slots. The 6th slot, or the first one to the left of your health, is always going to be your heal skill. The following 3 skills are called utility skills, and the final skill is known as an elite skill. Now while all the skills to the left of your health bar, your weapon skills, are determined by the weapon that you have equipped currently, all of the skills to the right of your health bar are actually purchased with hero points. Now if you've watched my previous guide, you'll know what hero points are. These are obtained by completing hero challenges or also just by leveling up. If you open up your hero panel by pressing H and then go to the 3rd tab down, known as the training tab, you'll see a giant circle with a bunch of skills every so often around that circle. By spending hero points, you'll unlock these and eventually complete the entire circle to reveal the overall image or theme of the training you're doing. So at first you want to focus on the skills and later on the specializations. So from levels 1 through 80, the skills that you choose here are probably going to get you through most of the game, no matter what you pick. If you're looking for a specific class guide, they might tell you to take certain skills over others, but for the purposes of this guide, I'll just tell you to kind of go with whatever sounds right in the moment. You'll want to unlock all of these skills because Guild Wars 2 periodically does balance updates, and skills that weren't as good become better, and skills that were overused become nerfed, and so it's a good idea just to have these at your disposal anyway. By the time you hit level 80, you'll have enough hero points to purchase all of these skills. So I recommend just going with what sounds fun until you get to a point where maybe you need to focus in just a little bit to get through some harder content later on. So once you've unlocked a couple of skills, you can click the up arrow above each one of your utility skills to equip them. Anytime you're out of combat, you can switch these. So again, it's a really good idea to have as many of these at your disposal as you can. So after you've acquired a nice little set of skills, it's a good idea to start working on specializations. As with your utility skills, it will require hero points to unlock each tier of these specializations. Now it only takes about 5 skills to complete the entire line for any one of your skill trees, but specializations take far more. When you buy a utility skill, it's pretty obvious what you get out of that exchange. You get a skill on your bar that you can use when you want to. But with specializations, you buy those and you think, well, what is this even for? Why am I wasting these points? In the hero menu, just above the training tab, you'll see the build tab. Click this and you'll start to understand what specializations are. So as you begin to unlock things in the training tab, they also become available in the build tab under the specialization that you've been putting points into. These things that you've been unlocking are called traits. Traits can be used to power certain weapons, change the way utility skills work. It's basically the core of the customization for how your character interacts with enemies in the game. When you unlock your first specialization tree, you'll only have one to put these into. Now, while I'll give you the same advice I gave with utility skills and just kind of go with what feels fun, it's also not a bad idea to go with something offensive, especially when you only have the one line, just to make sure that you have enough power to get through the content. So once you've unlocked all the traits for a specialization tree, it's time to pick which ones you want to activate. Unfortunately, you won't be able to have access to all of these at the same time, but just like most things in this game, when you're out of combat, you can switch these on the fly. To assign the traits that you'd like to use, just create a line, starting from the first trait available all the way to the end. You can see that it alternates between 1 and 3. Anytime you hit 1, that is a given trait for that line, and anytime you hit 3, you have to make a decision. You can only have one of those 3 active at any time, so choose wisely. So now you have a pretty good idea of how to manage the bulk of your bar. At least the first 9 skills, we're still forgetting the elite skill. So as you complete your utility skill line, you'll sometimes unlock an elite skill. These skills are just like any other utility skill on your bar, only they usually do some pretty incredible things, but are also on a longer cooldown, so you can't use them as frequently as you might want to. A few examples of this would be turning into an animal, getting a giant bazooka, or even just having a few seconds of invulnerability. A few of those abilities I just mentioned are racial elite skills. These are determined by what race you decided to play in the beginning of the game. Norn, for instance, can transform into a variety of animals, and that bazooka I was talking about is actually called the Char-zooka, so if you are a Char, you have that in your future. These racial elite skills are actually unlocked automatically when you unlock the ability to have elite skills at level 31. In my experience with Guild Wars 2, the racial elite skills are mostly for fun. That's not to say that they don't do damage and that they can't be useful, but usually the profession skills outweigh in sheer utility what racial skills bring to the table. I only say this so that you don't choose a race solely based on that racial elite skill, only to find out that maybe the profession elites are maybe a little better. So last but certainly not least are the profession abilities. As the name suggests, these abilities come from your profession. But for some classes like the warrior, the weapon you have on hand also determines what that skill will be. I talked briefly about some of these abilities in my original beginner guide, but we'll give a few examples just so you get the gist of what these can do. These abilities are the core of every class. For example, an elementalist has 4 profession abilities, each one attuning it to a different element and changing all of its weapon skills. This can swap you between healing, defending, attacking, and so on. Another example would be the Thief's Steal ability. This ability doesn't actually steal items from enemies or players per se. It doesn't add anything to your inventory, but it allows you to shadow step or teleport to a foe, stealing an item and pocketing it for later use. This item is dependent on the enemy that you're fighting and can be used to heal you, deal damage, or just spread conditions. The core functionality here though is that you get to teleport to an enemy. Whatever profession you choose, just make sure to make good use of these abilities. Not to mention picking skills, weapon, or utility that complement those abilities. So you'll notice that combat in this game doesn't really require the use of mana to keep using abilities, rather cooldowns take the place of that. But in addition to cooldowns, some classes still require a form of energy to do damage. For instance, the warrior class needs at least 1 full bar of adrenaline to even use its profession skills. The Heart of Thorns class, Revenant, literally uses energy, so you have to be mindful of what abilities you're using. And the Thief class uses initiative. Across from the Thief's Steal ability, you'll see a series of little white diamonds. Your abilities will consume these, and you'll have to wait for them to refill on their own. The more powerful the ability, the more they consume at once. So now that we've droned on about all this extra happy stuff, let's go ahead and get ourselves out in actual combat. Okay, so I don't want to talk about the individual skills because that kind of falls under a class guide, and this is more of a combat basics guide, but there is something that pertains to all characters that we should probably talk about, and that is auto attack. So by default, your skill 1 is going to be the skill that automatically activates when you're in range of an enemy. But that doesn't mean that that's the only skill that can be your auto attack. If you'd like to change the skill that activates automatically, hold down Control and right-click that skill. Skills that require specific targeting or ground-targeted skills cannot be set to auto-attack. Also, if at any time you activate another skill, the loop of that auto-attack will stop. In my experience, I usually just leave this to the default setting of skill 1, but if you end up running a build where a certain skill needs to be activated as soon as it can be, there could be some play here. Okay, so to target an enemy, you can click it or hit tab. If you're facing more than one enemy, you can hit tab again to cycle between nearby enemies. In addition to that, you can set another key to target your nearest enemy. Moving on from targeting, let's talk about the two kinds of enemies. If you see an enemy whose name appears in yellow, that means that they're a passive creature, but by attacking them, you can start a fight. Enemies in red will start to chase you as you get near them, and those are the ones that you're probably going to be fighting most of the time. By being hit or starting a fight by using one of your skills, you'll see that the area around your health bar becomes kind of yellow, and this means that you're in combat. While you're in this mode, you'll move slower, so it's sometimes best just to deal with the enemies if you can, so that you can get out of combat and get your full movement speed back. But in this instance, we want this fight. So as you fight an enemy, you're using your skills, you're dealing damage. Let's say this enemy throws out a huge AoE, and maybe you're unable to get out of the way just by moving your character around. Now is time for a dodge. In Guild Wars 2, a dodge is basically temporary invulnerability. This may sound a little broken at first, but I promise you it takes a minute for that bar to fill back up. The dodge roll mechanic is part of Guild Wars 2's action combat system. I'm sure you've noticed without me even needing to tell you that a few of the skills on your bar might actually fling your character forward or make them move all on their own. It's important to know which skills do this so you don't accidentally fling yourself off a cliff or into more enemies. Now what happens if you accidentally do something like that and all of your health is depleted? Your character falls to the ground and you get 4 downed skills. These skills are specific to the profession that you're playing and can be used to rally if you manage to defeat a foe before your health runs out. Sometimes this can be easier said than done. You're losing 2.5% of your health every second, not to mention you're still taking damage from the enemies around you. This takes a little while to get used to, but I gotta say, nothing feels better than cheating death. Now, despite the fact that you just cheated death and you feel great, you do have a downed penalty on your character that lasts for 60 seconds. This decreases your maximum health by 25% each time. Now, if this happens 4 times within a minute, you won't be able to rally and you'll instantly die. So now comes the infamous question, what happens when we die? Upon death, you need to pick a waypoint to respawn at. Additionally, you'll notice that just below your health bar, or your health circle, I guess, you'll see a new symbol you haven't seen before. This is letting you know that your armor has been slightly damaged due to that death. Die too many times and your armor will literally break off of your character, leaving nothing more than a naked little Asura. The remedy for this was actually mentioned in my previous video, but I didn't really have time to elaborate. Damaged armor can be repaired for free at any repair NPC, or sometimes it's just a little anvil with a repair sign above it. While this used to cost money, it's actually free now, so die all you want, I guess. So now that you have all this information, you might be starting to theory craft a build for your character, and you're looking deeper into the individual skills that you have, and you're noticing that some of these skills say things like combo finisher or combo field or something to that effect. This is in reference to the combo attacks you can do with other players. If a player places down a combo field and then someone activates a finisher while within that field, there is a special effect, and that is dependent on the skill that you're using. I've noticed a lot of players overlook this feature entirely, and while it's not completely essential, it can really make a difference in certain fights, especially with less players. Small parties can spread conditions, or even get additional healing if they take advantage of this feature. That's not to say that this doesn't work with large parties, but with so many people, it's almost impossible to see those fields on the ground in the first place. The second to last thing that I want to talk about is buffs. Periodically, while you're using certain abilities or even some traits can trigger things like this, you will add buffs to yourself or your allies. And it's really important to know what these things do. For instance, Aegis gives everyone a free block. Vigor increases the rate in which you regain endurance, which is what you use to dodge roll. Regeneration gives you health regeneration. Swiftness allows you and your friends to run faster. Might increases power and condition damage. The list goes on and on. I mean, there are a lot of these things going on in the game, and it's really easy to overlook them completely. So I'm not going to go over every single buff in the game, but I will leave a link down below so that you guys can familiarize yourself with the symbols and what they do, so you know exactly why you're dealing that extra bit of damage, or maybe why you got killed so fast that last time. So the last and final thing that I want to make mention of before I conclude this guide is related to combat, but isn't as essential as the other things we've talked about today. And that is resurrection. In a lot of other MMOs, it requires a healing spec to do some sort of res on another player, but as I said earlier, Guild Wars 2 doesn't follow the Holy Trinity. Every character can walk up to any other downed or dead character and press F to start healing them. Now, there will always be situations where you just can't do this, but if you're able, res someone. Guild Wars 2 is one of the friendliest communities I've ever been a part of, and I think it's in part due to that simple system they have in place. And with that, guys, I'm going to wrap up this guide. I hope you found this informative. I know it was kind of a lot of information to take on at once. I definitely didn't expect it to last this long, and I am thanking myself thoroughly for making this before making my Part 3 beginner guide. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. If you have any ideas for another video, if you'd like a guide on something in particular, feel free to let me know. But as always, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you found this informative, and we'll see you next time.